So my name is Govin Whittles, the host of the IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk.
This is the platform where we hope to bring you insightful views on the latest marketing trends.
Brands are really flying into their strategy.
Convenience and being closer to your customer.
Guests who are engaged in helping move the industry forward.
Good morning and welcome to another installment of the IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk. It's an absolute privilege to be hosting this conversation, which hopes to, as the episodes go by, take a look at the emerging trends in the world of marketing and supply chain and give you insights that are useful not only within your marketing meetings, but as you plot your career forward, and also make sure that you as a marketer, as a student, as a graduate are in touch with what's at the cutting edge of marketing and supply chain. And this week, it's no different. We've spoken a lot about digital marketing, where it ranks in the marketing mix, how much budget is allocated to it. And through those conversations, we've had a lot of time that's been spent on looking at the analytics in digital marketing, the research that's required, how you learn from what the data shows, and how that can make you a better marketer. And today, it is my pleasure to be talking about analytics in digital marketing. As usual, we have two awesome guests, real experts in the field that will be helping us shepherd the conversation along, bringing forth those insights and then breaking down some of the information. With me, I have Jacqui Muller, who works at the intersection of business, technology, and education. She's got expertise in automation, custom development, data analytics, and helps organizations drive digital transformation while empowering future talent through her role as industry co-ordinator at Belgium Campus and as a researcher at the University of the Northwest, where she is pursuing a PhD. That's very impressive. Jacqui is a UiPath Most Valued Professional MVP. She's a visionary educator, and she directs JPanda Solutions and Technica Unlimited. I hope I've said that correctly, Jacqui. Thank you so much for joining us here at the IMM Institute's Friday Flash Talk. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And joining Jacqui and helping us move the conversation along is Riane Dalziel. She's a marketing academic, and she is also the founder of Think Digital ZA. That's a digital marketing company focused mainly on social media marketing. Riane has put into practice all of her knowledge to build brands for international and national clients in the digital market. And she's also started Things to Do with Kids, which is an initiative which encourages being a responsible tourist in your own country. Renee is a marketing academic, a researcher, entrepreneur, lectured at NWU's School of Management Sciences, and she's received a faculty teaching award. Riane, thank you so much and welcome to the IMM Institute. Flash Talk. It's been an interesting series of episodes that we've had, and I think that we've really moved the conversation forward in a number of respects where we are aware of where the digital marketing world is. But today we're talking about analytics in digital marketing. Jacqui, why don't you tell us as a start why analytics in digital marketing is important, and what do you do with the analytics that makes you a better marketer?
Thank you so much, Govin, and thank you so much for having us. I think this is a very interesting topic, and I think as the world is starting to change, and as we see emerging technologies like AI come about, we start to realize that the most important part of this journey really is data and the analytics we can pull from it. And we see a very big movement in the world towards how we can use the data to our disposal to be able to drive different insights and make different decisions in different businesses and different industries. And I don't think digital marketing is any different. So if we take a look at today's topic and we see how analytics is starting to become far more emerging, or technology that is starting to be used far more. I think it's interesting to see what kind of facets of data points we can collect and actually use that to drive businesses forward.
Renee, what do you think of how analytics is used in digital marketing? Are we doing better with it now, or is it changing?
No, definitely. I mean, if you just have a look at, your meta ads on Facebook, Instagram, you can change it in real time, which makes it, so much more optimized. You can have a look at how your ad is performing throughout the day and change it. There was a retailer that changed so they had a Black Friday, ad, 5 of them running, and they could immediately see which one performed better. They allocated more money towards the one that performed better, and that increased their conversion rates immediately. I mean, if you think of a billboard, you can't do anything. It costs millions of rands to put it up. And if it's not performing well, sorry, you just have to deal with it. Whereas with your digital marketing, you can change it. And that would be based on your data analytics that you collect on a daily basis, on like every minute.
Jacqui, which kind of data is the most valuable when it comes to looking at analytics?
I think that's an interesting one. And I also think it depends very much on the kind of campaign that you're trying to run. So I think there's definitely value to be had in having a mix between qualitative and quantitative data. Obviously, there's different ways of looking at that and turning that into different analytics. I think if we're talking specifically digital marketing, it's a lot easier to make decisions off of quantifiable data. So being able to understand, what is the organic engagement rate on different posts and different campaigns. Being able to understand how different campaigns have kind of competed against one another, if I can put it that way. I think competitor analysis and market research is really where data is also becoming quite important. And it was a conversation we had last week as well. Being able to have access to the correct analytics that is being measured across the industry to be able to inform what your market research should look like is also quite an interesting space to be playing in at the moment.
What are the correct analytics? Okay, let me ask, what's the incorrect analytics? How do you not want to be using it?
So I think one thing you don't want to be doing if you have analytics is actually ignoring what the analytics or the data is telling you. I think if you have, and I think this is something we do in many different spaces, is we often introduce bias. So I think one of the most challenging things when you're looking at analytics or looking at the underlying data is to understand what needs to be pulled from that, what needs to happen from this. How do you look at it objectively and not add any bias into that? And let's say we're looking at comparing campaigns. If you've got 3 different campaigns that you've been running over the course of a year, and you've got different insights that have come into play, or different engagement rates, different metrics that you've pulled, average engagement rates is another one, those kinds of things. If you pull those kinds of analytics from these campaigns, it's important to understand what could have impacted them. But often when we start to look at the underlying factors of analytics, it introduces bias. So for instance, we could have had the wrong campaign running in the wrong season, and because it was a winter campaign, for instance, and we're running it in the summer, we might not necessarily have gotten as much attention. So these are the kinds of things that I think, I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly, but there are different underlying factors that we also need to consider when we're looking at analytics.
Can I jump in quickly?
Go ahead.
Thanks. So quantitative versus qualitative data, I would say you need to use both. Quantitative, will show you the engagement rate, for instance. But what are you going to do about it? So, say, for instance, you have a drop in your website traffic, right? And that you can get from your data analytics. But now, why? Why are you getting a drop in your website traffic? Maybe it's because of your website being slow. Maybe it's because of it's not a relevant topic anymore that you're talking about. So then you need to use qualitative data. Maybe go onto social media and see, is this topic still trending? Is this something that we need to talk about? Or should we change it up a bit? Or and a good example would be like a restaurant that saw a drop in their online reservations. And then upon qualitative data analytics, you would see that a lot of people talked about, say, for instance, slow service, or the website, when they want to make an online booking, it immediately it redirects to another page or something. It might be something simple that you can just fix. That being said, purchase history is a very important data or collection that you need to take into consideration, because that's the actual action and not only an interest. So website traffic is something that's also a very good data point that you need to take into consideration. And then something else that also popped up was social media engagement, but not only just engagement, but sentimental analysis. So what's being said about your brand online? Is it negative? Is it positive? Or is it just neutral? For instance, a neutral one would be, there's a new series on Netflix. That's neutral. But if someone talks bad about your brand, you need to try and correct it on social media. Again, it's I think it's the top layer of data analytics, where Jacqui spoke more about delving deeper into like 1 year campaigns, but it's a good start to just take a look at those as well.
I think I should ask this question for both of you. So, Jacqui, how widespread is the use of analytics in marketing in South Africa, or let's say our industry now? We take it for granted that most agencies or marketers make use of digital campaigns and then kind of get feedback. But how common is it for people, as Riane was saying, to change the ad midstream because they have access to that analytics?
I think this definitely varies. I don't think there's one set answer for the industry as a whole. I think there are different levels of maturity. And I think this is definitely attributed to by different things. So if we think about the different kinds of tools and technologies that would go alongside analytics, I think that makes a very big impact on how far somebody or an agency would be, for instance, in their digital marketing adoption. If we look at the digitization. And I think one of these reasons is because the investment into these kinds of tools and technologies can be quite pricey, and we don't always necessarily see the return on investment on those kinds of those tools and technologies that we end up purchasing. And I think this is also something that I've seen quite closely coupled with analytics. So if we start to look at how process automation comes in, we start to look at how different marketers use AI in this journey as well. That all starts to talk to the adoption. And again, I think in South Africa, we're at different points of the scale. I think we have some agencies that are really good and some marketers who are really good and, up there, they're staying up to date with the trends. And then we have, some marketers who are still trying to learn what this means for them. How should they be, getting onto this journey, and how should they, what is there to their disposal to use to be able to improve their productivity and scale out their campaigns a lot better in the digital space.
But how do you use it, Riane? So let's say you're the person responsible for looking at the analytics in the marketing team, right? And then you have access to the click-through rates, the conversions, the reviews, so both the qualitative and quantitative data. How do you use that in the rollout or the preparation? Are you the person that gives them a package beforehand and says, look, this is what the data says will probably work? Or are you coming in to say change it? Or do you do a review after?
It depends on the business. It depends on the size of the business, what you're selling. There are quite a lot of factors that play a role. But I would say for anyone starting out, if you just think about a small business that you are starting off with, start small. Just take it bite by bite. Like, for instance, your first data collection that you can do is maybe to see how your various Instagram posts are doing. Whether a single image, a reel, or a carousel type image is performing better, and then you can build on that. When you take a look at your conversion rates and your click-through rates, that becomes a bit more intricate. So people might not know what to do with that data. Obviously, you want people to convert, but you need to have your Facebook pixel, your Meta pixel set up. There's a lot of things that need to be in place for you to actually determine whether they convert or not. So for small businesses, I would say keep it simple. Just take a look at, how your social media engagement is going at first before you start running meta ads and that. But always your click-through rate and your conversion rate is obviously the most important ones. If that is, say, less than 3%, you need to worry because obviously something's not right. The click-through rate it seems very small, but remember now, if you are running a meta campaign, right? I just set up one last night for $40 per day, and I think already this morning I had like 7 clicks, and it was 65 cents, right? That it cost me. So if you have an enormous budget, right? Or say you make it 100 Rand a day, imagine the clicks or the reach that you are going to get. If I got 7 clicks from 65 cents, so say 100 Rand, that would obviously have a lot more reach. So then it becomes a bit easier to make, the 3%. Because I saw your eyes were like, only 3%, but it's quite a lot. If you take a look at say for instance, a 10,000 reach, 3% of that is quite a lot. So especially for small businesses. I hope that answered your question.
It does in a way, and the other thing is like I'm trying to think of marketers that are offering analytics driven campaigns to their clients, right? What is the main benefit? So okay, let me ask it this way. So what do the clients want when it comes to the use of analytics? Are they looking for report backs, or is the changing of the ad midstream an anomaly, or are we seeing more and more of that happening?
I think a lot more. We're seeing that a lot more. But it depends on the client, whether they want a report for every single, adjustment that is made, or whether they just want a report. Some clients don't even need a report. They're like the proof is in the pudding. So we don't care what the data says. Just do what you need to do. And we'll obviously see if it works or not, because we take a look at our click-through rates on our website, for instance, or they usually have some sort of way that they measure it, whether it's physical, purchases in store. Yeah.
And I've seen that many companies or marketers use analytics to give a report back on what's happened, but the more interesting part is when it's used for personalized marketing campaigns, and when you use predictive analytics to target or segment the base that you're going through. Jacqui, talk to me about how you can use analytics before you've started and why it's better.
So while we were having this conversation, one of the use cases that actually jumped into my mind was a project I did probably about 2 years ago with one of our blood services providers in South Africa. And their marketing departments actually served as their pre-sales wing of their business, because their marketing team would be responsible for making sure they knew exactly where to go put pop-up clinics down. They had analytics of, where the different blood groups were kind of located, so they could send out mobile teams very directed in a very specific way. And if I look at the amount of data they'd captured that was living, on Word documents that, a team of 10, 15 people would have to sift through to be able to understand, where to drive these decisions and how to make these decisions, it was really impactful, because it took quite a while for these meaningful analytics, if I can call it that, to actually inform a decision. If a lot of that was digitized, for instance, it would have been something they could have done a lot quicker. Now, there's quite a few different use cases that lived within this team that made the analytics very important and made it very relevant to what they were trying to achieve. But a lot of the business was actually driven by what was done in this team. And I think that was one of the standout stories for me of how it can be optimized. You can take analytics, you can, put it into a form. And I know we're using analytics as a very general term here, but you can take the data that you're getting to drive meaningful impact. And is if you start digitizing that and start putting analytics on, predictive analytics on it, and you start putting models on it, there's a lot more you can drive for that. So
What
for
kind of
instance,
models?
something.
So these are all I'm pretty sure that there are marketers out there who want to use these tools, but are probably guilty of having all that data on the Word document and have people that are going until 10 p.m., 11 p.m. reading those documents.
Mhm.
What tools should they be using? And when you say predictive analytics tools, what are they? How do you use them?
Perfect. That's actually a really good question. So I think, we often joke around a lot about Excel. I think there's a lot of people who really hate Excel out there, but it's a really good place to start. So being able to put your data in a form that makes sense, being able to put it down into an Excel spreadsheet, being able to take that Excel spreadsheet and put it into a tool like Power BI allows you to make really quick and informative decisions based on what you can see from your data. It's also tools that are relatively easy to pick up and use, so there aren't necessarily huge commercial costs that are associated with them. And the nice thing about this is you can start to see trends in your data quite quickly. And the trends in the data really are what start to impact or influence what your predictive models would look like. So there are tools out there like Power BI that can do trends and forecasts for you based on the data that you're putting. It's not necessarily something that you need to go write out, or you don't necessarily need a data scientist on your team to be able to make sense of what is going on. It is a good thing to have, one of those. But I think something that can be picked up now already is being able to just start to group the different data points based on what is available. And I think sometimes that's the most difficult part in a business, is understanding what data is available to drive insights.
There's nothing
I
better
don't
for
know
a
if that
business
answers your
than,
question.
yeah, it does, but there's nothing better for a business there's nothing better for a business owner than finding an app that you download where you can
Hmm.
plug all your stuff in, and then it tells you
Exactly.
what your customers are going to buy next, what they don't like, where they are,
Yeah.
where they'll be next, and it kind of scrolls and scrapes all the reviews off, so that
Hmm.
you can make an easier decision. Renee, you'll be able to tell us about this. What differentiates a marketer that uses analytics, like just normal numbers, from a marketer that really excels in using analytics to drive the business forward? What is level one? What's level two?
So I think a marketer that doesn't use data analytics to its full potential would definitely lack in strategy. You need to base your decisions on data, because otherwise it's just a guessing game. So if you use your data correctly, you will have fact-based decisions that you can use. I think AI has made it easier for marketers to make such decisions and to build on a strategy. But I don't think marketers need to be wary of not having a job one day because AI might take over. It's not going to happen because you need the creative part still. If you think about the Coca-Cola campaign, right, the names that you get on the can, or got on the can, that wasn't a data-based decision. Yes, it was a creative. It was someone who creatively, thought of this initiative, and then they used data to determine what names to print, etc. But you still need the creative part, and I think using data analytics to your advantage as a marketer is so important these days, because people can, change ads and everything midstream, and you are competing so much more. The competition is fierce, because if you think of social media, you're not only competing, say you are Nike, right? You're not only competing against Under Armour or Reebok. You are competing against everything that's on social media. Whether it's a stupid video that's about a cubby laughing or whatever the case may be, the competition is fierce. And if you don't use your data analytics to target your audience to the fullest, yeah, you're not going to survive in this day and
Mm, I, th-
age.
I think the example of the names on the can is a great one for demonstrating the partnership between the creative and the marketing analyst, right?
Yeah.
And before we move on, Could you guys give us a name of a few programs or apps that help for marketers who are trying to learn how to use data analytics? Riane, could start with you.
So I don't really like the Meta ad campaign on the Meta Business Suite with where you have Ads Manager as well as the LinkedIn Ads Manager. That's a good start because you can set the metrics, you can take a look at the click-through rates, the link clicks, the that would be a good start. And then also obviously Google Analytics. You need to install that, and that's easy to install on WordPress. There's a plugin that you can just install, and that is also for website traffic. That's that's the begin all and end all. You can see everything on there. So I would say those 2 or 3. If you are doing social media, which I strongly advise you to do, and then your website, so Google Analytics, and then LinkedIn Ads Manager as well as Meta Ads Manager. Then you also get CRM programs, HubSpot. But again, as Jacqui mentioned, it's you need to have the paid version. You need to pay for that. And there's also a Hotjar. That also helps with taking a look at your different data sets, and it gives you a bit of clarity in understanding your user experience. Also, Microsoft Clarity is the other one that determines your user experience.
Those are a lot of apps, man, and a lot of programs. And I'm sure that anyone who's either a graduate or is thinking about transitioning their business marketing strategy to lean more heavily towards digital will definitely benefit from those. Jacqui, do you want to add in any of them?
Yeah, I actually would. Thank you. So I do agree with what Riane said. I think that when we look at analytics, it's important to understand the life cycle and the different apps you would need to use in the life cycle. So one of the things you would definitely need is to understand, are some of the data points you'd be looking at and extract that. So what Riane said about, Google Analytics, that's a really good example of being able to extract information about how your different campaigns are doing on your different platforms. What you're also going to want to do is bring all of that data together and somehow try and marry it up so that you can start to look at, different data points from different systems that you might be using. In some of the larger corporate spaces, you might be able to look at your CRM system and pull out what your leads versus your conversions are versus your sales and see, what your actual conversion rate is from a marketing to a sales perspective. And I think Power BI really is a good tool to do that. It's the Microsoft Power BI desktop tool that you can install. There are a few others as well that are competing products. So there are Tableau, there is Click, there's a few different tools in that space. But it is very powerful in the sense that you can bring different data sources together. In terms of being able to scrape information, Govind, you said earlier, there are use cases where you might want things like reviews in. You might want to be able to extract reviews from websites and those kinds of things. That is really where we start to look at robotic process automation. So this was also a theme that we saw come out of the African Marketing Confederation conference that was held in Ghana in August. Robotic process automation is something that a lot of marketers are starting to use to actually gain information or gather information from different websites. So instead of you having to manually go sit and troll the different websites and copy and paste things, into spreadsheets and into Word documents, you can use tools in the robotic process automation space like UiPath, Power Automate Desktop. There's a bunch of them you can choose from.
Yeah.
But essentially, you can use that to kind of enrich a lot more of your data points.
That's the IMM Friday Flash Talk difference. And I think that is really the cutting edge of what the next stage of using analytics is. That does sound very intimidating, though. Do you have to have do you have to have mastered the use of these different analytics programs for you to get to the robotics processing automation systems?
No, actually not. So a lot of the vendors in this space have actually created what they call citizen developer programs. So this enables literally anybody to go onto these platforms, learn how to use them, and actually start to pull very valuable information off of these tools. So there's been a lot of focus in the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years in kind of democratizing, these tool sets that literally anybody can use them. You don't need an IT background or an IT qualification in any way to be able to understand how these tools work and to be able to drive insights from them.
Riane, I know that there's a lot of excitement and potential when talking about analytics, but the big question from the clients, business owners especially, is how will this impact on my return on investment, or how will this reduce my wasted ad spend, right? Does it actually work? That's the question.
It does. It really does. It's very difficult to convince clients because they want to spend zero on marketing because the return on investment takes quite a while to actually show. So that is the big, like, if you're a marketer, good luck. If you're a business owner, please be mindful that your return on investment will show, but it might take some time. But yeah, as I said, you can measure literally everything that's happening online. So spending money on digital marketing is much wiser than spending money on, your normal marketing. Because how are you going to determine how many people saw your billboard? You can't determine that. How are you going to determine how many people saw a homepage banner on a website? You can determine that in one click. So yeah, it's definitely worth the money spent.
Is digital marketing and the use of analytics undercut by not having a, what do you say, a click-through payment platform online?
It might have, but not. It depends on your business. It depends on the products you're selling. I mean, if you're selling services, that won't affect it, I think. I don't know. Jacqui, what are your thoughts?
I think it depends on the strategy. Very much to what you were saying, Riane. I think it depends on the business and the marketing strategy. So if you are working on a smaller system and you've got, a few very, I want to say, disparate systems that you're measuring, I think that would have a very different impact as to if you were working in a large corporate and you have a lot of different systems that you need to monitor. There's a lot of different points that you're pulling. And I guess in this sense, when we're looking at digital marketing, the social media campaigns, critical to ensure that your advertisements get out there. But I think there's also underlying things that impact the way that those get created. What is the message we're trying to drive? And I think that's where the complexity really does lie. I think also going back to the conversation we were having about return on investments, I think this is something we've definitely seen in the automation space as well. It's sometimes more complicated to measure return on investment because different businesses will value different metrics. So for some businesses, they might want to make sure that they can scale their adverts out a lot quicker. They want to make sure their campaigns are, more broadly spread. Whereas another smaller organization might just focus on being able to get meaningful engagement, not necessarily having high numbers in volume, but having very organic engagements that pull through to a lead on a website.
Yeah, that's why I also said about the product, I think, and your company size. I mean, if you are a large corporation, it's going to be much different than your smaller type of organizations or your one-man shows, and then the metrics as well. You want to take a look at the customer lifetime value. You don't want someone that's just like purchasing one item. You want to build a relationship with your customer and obviously have a lifetime of spend. Well, it depends again on the product. So yeah.
But really, the conversation is around the ROI, and the question really is like, what's the one thing you don't want to do when you have invested in, say, digital analytics that are meant to bring you return on investment? What's the one thing you don't want to do that will undercut that? Is it as simple as saying, don't invest all of this money in the digital analytics if you don't have a follow-through or way to measure whether it's working? Or is there a few things that you shouldn't do, Jacqui?
I think you need a plan. So I think with any environment where it becomes key and you're driving a data-driven business, you need a plan. You need to understand what you're capturing and why you're capturing it and what you're going to do with it. And that very easily starts to translate in, once you have a business decision that you want to drive, how quickly can you pivot on that? And I think that's the very big positive point of where we are in the digital landscape at the moment. Because if you use these tools to their full potential, you can fail fast and you can pivot quickly. So you can turn, what is a lack of ROI over quite quickly. You can start to create new campaigns and publish these campaigns so that they can, make up whatever is lost in time. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen and one of the biggest challenges that a lot of companies face is that they don't use the opportunity with the analytics that they're pulling to make the decision to pivot quickly. And I think that's generally where a lot of return on investment opportunity is lost.
Is it easier to convince them to pivot once you have the analytics? Yeah. Suppose the data doesn't lie.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
also over time, I mean, you do need to show a consistent spread or consistent trend of, what their following would be and what their normal engagement rates are, so that you can pick up where those pits and hikes are, or peaks rather.
What are the most important KPIs marketers should be tracking when it comes to digital analytics?
I'll take that. Again, I think we mentioned it earlier, it's the click-through rate and the conversion rate, because it's actually an actionable task. They are clicking on your link, and that's what you want, because as soon as they are on social media, as I mentioned, the competition is fierce. There's a lot of competition. If they click through to your website, there's no competition. It's only your website that they are seeing. Then obviously your conversion rate is also very important, because that is the to not only viewing but actually going into action. And then the customer lifetime value, whether you are just selling your free trial or getting people to sign up for your free trial, or are you actually building a relationship with them and nurturing a brand advocate rather than just a consumer.
Yeah, I think to add on to that as well, the sentiment analysis is important to understand where your brand currently sits. Mm-hmm. And I think also to kind of translate how that affects the bottom line, because that's essentially what a lot of businesses would be looking at. How does the investments I'm making into my digital marketing impact the profit that I'm going to make? Is it going to mean that I understand my products better and I can better invest in those products? Is it going to help me understand, which of my salespeople are better at being able to market? Do I need to put them in front of more clients? Do I need to, try avail some of their time? Do I need to prioritize what accounts these people are working on? There's a lot of other analytics that I think are affected when we start to the knock-on effect that digital marketing can have in a business. And although those aren't necessarily metrics that everybody should be measuring right now, I think it's always good to start with the end in mind and see, when you start a digital marketing journey, and I know Riane does this very well with their clients, what is the end goal? What do you want to achieve? Because that drives the strategy. Riane and her team can only do as much as they can if they know what you're trying to achieve.
All of this sounds like a lot of work. Do you need to have a designated marketing analyst on the team? We always talk about the marketing team, but I know there are marketers out there that are single-handedly developing, executing, reporting back on campaigns, and they pride themselves on being the creative and the data scientist. Is this too much work for one person, Jacqui?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot to be said about having somebody who's focused on data science and knowing how to pull analytics, being able to pull insights, being able to, make the predictive look forward. I think that's always been the difference between a data analyst and a data scientist. The data analyst will tell you what decisions you can make from the data you have, whereas a data scientist would tell you, what questions should you be asking based on the data that you have and how do we answer those. And I think there's a very specific role that each of these different personas in a business would play. And I think there's a lot to be said about being able to partner with a data scientist, being able to have them understand your landscape, but you maintaining the experience as a marketer of what works in your domain. Being able to bring those two worlds together, I think, has a lot more value than expecting one person to master all of these skills.
Riane, would you recommend, how many people would you recommend in the team? Or let's say you're a small business that's hoping to scale up your marketing. What do you do if you don't have the money to hire a data analyst or a data scientist?
Yeah, that is a bit difficult. I would agree. Someone who loves data is probably most of the time not someone that's creative, and vice versa. So it would definitely be beneficial, but we have AI. So I think we can use ChatGPT to an extent where they can analyze the data, and then you can make decisions based on that. I think the decision part isn't necessarily, it can be made by the data and analyst as well as the marketing scientist or the marketer. So if you can get some sort of platform, for instance, ChatGPT or the robotics one that you mentioned, Jacqui, that can just help you to make sense of the data, and then your creative part can just come to play.
Yeah, hopefully this will help. If someone's going to outsource that role to someone, they'll be able to send a proper brief based on watching the IMM Friday Flash Talk. Using data is great, right? And it's expected across marketing campaigns. I mean, in everything these days. But the shadow of data is privacy, and it's really casts a very long shadow. In South Africa, the use of data is becoming more restricted because of the POPI Act. How do you navigate around the POPI Act, Jacqui, when you want to put together a package of analytics that will really uh, put your client on the front foot?
I think this is a very important topic, and it's something that's quite dear to my heart, because I think when we look at POPIA and we look at GDPR that is governed in the European Union, there's quite a few things that we don't necessarily consider when we're collecting data. And ultimately, the data we collect is what drives our decisions and our personalized marketing campaigns and those kinds of things. And I think there's a very fine line that we've started to see pop up. I mean, we can see what's happening with the Truecaller case in South Africa now as well, where the data that is being collected hasn't actually gone through informed consent. It hasn't gone through the right channels. There's a lot that is happening in this space where the data we have access to wasn't necessarily collected in the correct ways or legally, if I can put it that way. I think it's probably a bit more harsh and a bit more extreme. But I think there's a lot of focus on understanding the data points we may collect and informing the people whose data we are collecting that we are collecting this data. Something that I think has been quite interesting in this space specifically is utilizing tools that collect this data for us. So for instance, something like Google Analytics, that already manages Google profiles of everybody who looks at your website. It already manages, the ability to opt in or opt out of having your data collected. So if you want to understand what the age or the gender demographics of the people, clicking through your systems, clicking through your websites, interacting with your social media, that's already collected. That risk sits with a third party. If you're starting off small, it's good to de-risk yourself like that. What you do run the risk of is when you create personal campaigns, you do run the risk of irritating people because you're sending them things at a much more frequent rate than they would have been anticipating or expecting. And I think that's another part of it to get right. So although you have now the data that has been collected in a way that I think is a little bit more sensical and is a little bit more regulatory, is managed by the regulations and so on, it's also important to understand what you're going to do with that data so that you actually get a return on investment from your engagements. You don't necessarily want people to be blocking your email boxes or your RSS feeds or those kinds of things, because that's going to impact your brand negatively, and you might end up seeing that in your sentiment analysis.
Are you more careful with how you use the data because of the restrictions of POPI, Riane?
Yes, we are very mindful of that, and we try to be as transparent as possible. So, for instance, if you sign up, there's I'm signing up, so obviously you are going to receive. We also put a statement like you are going to receive marketing, but feel free to unsubscribe at any point. So yeah, you don't want it to be creepy. Your marketing shouldn't be creepy. It should just nudge them to see. I had a guest lecturer once when I was a lecturer, and he always said, one time you searched for tackies to go running, and that the orange pair of tackies would follow you everywhere you go online. For instance, your emails, your everywhere. So there's a fine line between just nudging them in the right direction and starting to get a bit creepy. But I think a lot of marketers know that, and they try to, be wary of not being creepy.
Well, I mean, I think that that's definitely top up in the considerations, but I think a lot of marketers will be thinking about how digital marketing will change, and whether there is an urgency around incorporating predictive modeling into their digital marketing strategies. What do you think the future is of digital marketing, considering the rise of predictive modeling and these robotic processing automation systems? Um, Jacqui?
So I think this is actually quite interesting because it's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and it's something we've seen happen quite a lot more. So thinking about the changes that are coming in now in the technological aspect, we have things like the predictive modeling, we've got things like AI coming in. There's a lot happening in the space. And as much as I'm excited to see how things like robotic process automation can give marketers time back to, about the quality of content they're putting out there, start to focus on the strategies, the more intuitive side of things, not necessarily being bogged down in repetitive processes. I'm excited to see how that's going to transform the landscape. What does scare me a little bit is that we're going to fall into this trap of using AI to generate the content we put onto our digital platforms. What scares me about that is that we lose the human touch very quickly. So if people can determine or identify that your campaigns have been set up predominantly through AI, and it loses that individual human touch, it does pose a bit of a risk to the brand. So I'm hoping that risk doesn't necessarily materialize too much. I'm very excited to see what this digital landscape is going to look like. But I think very much to the point that Riane made earlier, I don't think we need to be fearing these technologies. I think there's a lot to be said about how we can inform businesses and our clients and pretty much people better based on being able to say, for example, if we can see these are the trends that are coming in, if I go back to the Bbut use case, if we know that winter is sick season, there's going to be a lot more need for XYZ kind of blood types, we can start to predictably create a bit of a backload or pipeline of blood that we would need in those different areas based on what our stock levels are and those kinds of things. So I think there's a lot to be said about educating people from the trends we pick up in the digital marketing space as well. I'm excited for that.
It's all very exciting and a little overwhelming. And we've actually been talking for almost an hour already. It feels like we're just scratching the surface. This is something that requires a much longer conversation. And I think it's something that I think a lot of marketers will need to incorporate bit by bit. And with that, I'd like to ask Riane, at the end of every episode, we ask what your big takeaways are, right, from this conversation for marketers, graduates, and students. The two things you want them to write down and keep on their desk, and keep top of mind when considering digital analytics and how it applies to their marketing strategy. Riane, you can go first.
I think to have a plan, as Jacqui mentioned, you can have a lot of data and you can make decisions based on that. But what is your plan? What is your goal? What do you want to achieve? I think that is important for every single campaign that you're running, not only from a business, like an holistic goal, yes, but also for every single campaign. You need to just sit back and take a look at the bigger picture, like what do I need to achieve with this campaign? And something else that I would also say is start small. As I mentioned, first, just have a look at your social media engagements and see how your posts are doing, and see whether you can streamline that and whether you can use that data to streamline your social media posting. Then move to the next step where you will have a look at your Google Analytics, for instance, or your Meta ads, and just take it step by step, and don't overwhelm yourself with email marketing, Google Analytics, social media posting, social media ads. Especially if you are a small business, I would say start small. If you're walking into a big company, kudos. That's the first prize, obviously. And then I would say focus on one specific thing only. If you are more into data, just stick to that and not try and be a jack of all trades.
Jacqui, what are your takeaways from this conversation?
So there's a personal quote of mine that I absolutely love that I think is very much relevant to the digital marketing space, and I think that's something people should write down and think about a little bit. I think growth and comfort don't coexist. So it's important to understand that the world we're living in is emerging, it's changing, it's evolving. And why we do digital marketing is changing as well. So it's important for us to kind of, create that evolution as we go. And it's important for us to think about why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that informs a lot of the plan that we have. It informs a lot of the strategy. It informs a lot of the way that we actually execute digital marketing.
Thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure to talk about this, Jacqui Muller and Riane Dalziel, trailblazers and experts in the world of data analytics and especially how it applies to marketing. The insights that you've provided today will, I have no doubt, hold marketers in good stead and put them on the front foot as they try to implement new strategies. If anything, the tools that were mentioned earlier are really something that I hope marketers will grab onto, start experimenting with, and use to improve how they put their strategies together, how they change their strategies or pivot midstream, and also how they report back to clients. We hope that this will give you more business, that it will create a bigger platform for you as a marketer, and that it will impress your clients and show that you really are in touch with the cutting edge of marketing and how digital analytics impacts on marketing, not only in South Africa or the continent, but the world as well. My name is Govan Whittles. I'm the host of the IMM Friday Flash Talk. And as usual, please comment on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook. Keep the conversation going. Ask more questions. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you at the next episode.